Okay, now that we have an array, let's take a few minutes to think about where we're going with this. Obviously, in the ultimate goal of this project is to create a ceiling system, and our array right now is laying on the base plane. And I wanted you to just become familiar with what's also happening back on the other side, the flip side in the Revit environment. So I'm just going to close this down so you can see in the background that we have these blue dots in our Revit document. And if we click to a 3D view, I'm going to go to the view, and we haven't established one yet. You can see that these blue dots, they're probably on level 1. Let's go and confirm that. I'll go to a south elevation. You'll notice that these are sitting on level 1, and we really want to make a ceiling out of it, so we want to move them up. And let's say we're not going to make a 10-foot ceiling, so I'm going to just change level 1 right now to, let's just say 20 feet. And we'll go back to the 3D view. And sometimes Dynamo will give you problems saying it's not available. Actually, let's just go right back to Dynamo. And it's not giving us a problem with that view, but sometimes it'll say Dynamo is not available. And many times I find that you can quickly correct that by just making sure that you go back into Revit. And I've lost my Revit here. Let me just close this down and go to a 3D view, a standard 3D view. Okay, so I want to move these up so they're in the ceiling plane, and we're going to work always in Dynamo. We could and I guess an important point right now to make is these blue dots. These do not really exist inside of Revit. They're ghosted in. There's no actual objects. These can't be selected and or defined in the BIM environment. We have to create a sense of permanence with those with another function, and we'll do that close to the end of the project. So I'm going to go back to Dynamo though to show you how we're going to move that array up. Let's say the 20 feet. What we want to do is we want to change the Z value. Right now it's sitting at 0. So I'm going to use a new tool so we get to learn some more features. I'm going to use a number slider, and I'm just going to start right click and type in number and select number slider. And we'll look at a few things we can do to modify this right away. One of them is if I right click on this, I can rename it. And instead of calling it a number slider, I'll call it ceiling height. And I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to work in increments of, let's say, I don't know, 5 feet, and we'll go from 0 to 20 feet. So that'll actually only allow us to have 4 increments. Well, 5 with 0. And I'll set that for 20, as we had discussed. And we'll put that into the Z. And right away you'll notice now that our grid popped up high as if it's a ceiling. And we'll confirm that's where we want it to be by going back to the Revit document, and we'll go to the south elevation. And now you can see our blue dots are up at the 20-foot level, or the ceiling plane. Now let's look briefly at how we can make an object here. We have points, but points don't really define our ceiling. They're just kind of a grid system. And so what I'd like to do is just add some sort of an object to show us how we actually start to build stuff. So I'm going to go to solids under geometry, and I'm going to go to a cuboid, which is a rectangle or a box. And we're going to use the origin, and we'll use that point, and then a width, a length, and a height. So I'm just going to select that. It's going to pop up on the screen. I'll zoom in here a little bit so it's clearer. All of these are probably set to a default of 1. So if I plug in the origin to it right away, all of a sudden now we have these cuboids, these little objects. We're not going to use these in our actual project, although we could. As a matter of fact, I will leave them there. And we can work with it as we move along and change it. So let's go back now and look inside of the Revit environment, and you'll notice we have these blue, and these blue are indicating that they are coming from the Dynamo image that we're linked to in the other file. We can look at this at a 3D view. So now we have a, and that's actually a little strange because the way they're integrated with each other. I have to rotate this a little bit so you can see how they're cubes. And if I wanted, just to give you an idea of visual control, if I want to get rid of the dots that are showing here, I can turn off the points by coordinate, turn the preview off, and I think that will affect what happens back in Dynamo, or excuse me, in Revit. Now everything has disappeared, which surprises me. I think I might need to rerun. No, I shouldn't have to. Let me just change this a minute and then change it back and see if we get an image. And there we get the image back again of just the cubes without the center points in them. So the next thing I'm going to look at is how we're going to create that NURBS line. We're going to use a NURBS curve to alter the shape of our ceiling tile system. And so we'll pick that up in the next clip.